When it comes to making pizza, many people prefer to order from a restaurant rather than making it at home. And for many reasons, top one being for convenience. In fact, about 66% of Americans dine out because of this reason, or because they just don't want to cook or clean. However, 55% of Americans' food budget actually goes to dining out, and on average, a person spends $191 in a month spending on food outside. So obviously homemade cooking lowers this price. And buying a pizza at a restaurant will cost you about $15 to $25, but at home, it can cost you at minimum $4 a pie. So I think what looks the most tedious about making pizza at home is the stretching of the dough, which is basically refers to like pulling and the folding of dough to create its final shape before putting it in the oven. And this essentially makes the pizza have a good texture. It creates an airy crust and an even uniform dough. Now, so I want to show you a few tips on how to stretch dough out so it can look a little easier, a little more approachable. And I worked at a pizza restaurant for almost 3 years, and at first stretching dough looked very intimidating, but once the technique is learned, it can actually be a lot of fun. And in the end, it can save you some money. So, to begin, you want to make sure you're not wearing any watches or bracelets, any jewelry, because it gets kind of in the way of preparing the dough and just to keep everything clean. I also suggest wearing an apron because it gets messy. And for our food ingredients, you're going to need obviously your prepared pizza dough. You're going to need some cheese, some sauce, or whatever you like. The fun thing about making pizza at home is that you can customize it to however you would like. And so for my toppings, I'm using pepperoni, but you can use whatever. You're also going to need some flour and a pan to put your pizza in the oven. And you can grease this pan with oil. Any oil you have should be fine, or you can use some parchment paper, which is what I'm doing. So to begin, you want to first flour your surface just to make sure that your pizza doesn't stick and it's easy to work with. You don't need to use a lot of flour, just a little thin layer in there. Then you can go ahead and lay your pizza dough in the center. And so one of the first techniques you want to do is called the finger press technique, which is basically what it sounds like. You want to use your fingers and start from the center and just press gently on the dough. This prepares the dough. It also starts forming a crust. And so you want to push the air of the dough to the edge so you can start forming that crust. The crust should be about 1 centimeter thick. And just make sure to try your best to keep it circular. And you can add some more flour if you want. You can flip your pizza around, get both sides, and just keep finger pressing. The next technique is kind of called the table stretch. So you want to kind of put your hands with a V and place them in the middle, in the center of the flat disc. And you kind of just spread your hands apart, rotating the dough and pulling your hands away from each other, essentially. And this just always work from the center, but this just creates an even circle, and you can continue to keep that 1 centimeter edge and just help stretch that out a little more. And you can flip it out, flip it, add more flour, whatever you need to do. You can do this for a while. The next technique is the slapping of the dough. And you can do this in a lot of different ways. One, you can kind of let gravity do the work. So you want to grab from the the edge of the dough, and just hold it with your fingers and let the dough hang to kind of let it stretch a little more, and keep going rotating so that you just let gravity do the job. You can also carry the dough with your hands underneath, kind of curved, and lift them up and out to open the dough. So you just keep rotating. I'm trying to keep that 1 centimeter edge. Once you can continue to do these steps, and once you feel like you have your desired shape, then you can go ahead and place it in the pan. And now comes the fun part, putting the toppings. So for sauce, I'm going to start from the center, and you can use however much you like. Start from the center and start in a circular motion. Just gently press on the spoon, don't press too hard. And continue to leave that crust. So a good tip is to put your thumb in the crust, in the edge of the pizza, and once your spoon reaches that thumb is when you should stop saucing, just to keep that crust. Then for cheese, for a large pizza, I usually do 2.5 cups, but some people like lighter cheese. You can always just customize it however you like. The good tip is to just make sure that the cheese is covering everything, so that there's no spots where you can just see sauce. And then for pepperoni, with a large pizza, recommended to do 28 slices, but also you can just do whatever you like.